Hi, I'm Robert Dubwise Browne, and welcome to Song and a Story Season 2, where I play you a song and tell you a story. The story doesn't necessarily have to do with the song, sometimes it does. Today's song is another clip I'm not playing for you today. By the way, you like my view? I'm at home in Kingston, Jamaica, and decided to show off this half of my view. Anyhow, today's song is Journey, titled Journey, from the album Cliff Marley Tosh. And I'll be sharing a clip again from the performance I did at Alternative Music. So check out the clip from Cliff Marley Tosh Live, Journey. So today I'd like to share some of my journey with you. I'm aware that a lot of people don't know, you know, my background, my family, and all of this. So I decided that to coincide with the song Journey, let's share some of my journey with you today. So I was born in the 70s, late 70s, and grew up pretty much with my mom alone. Not alone, because my father was always in close proximity. He actually lived maybe 10 minutes away. But born to Elaine, Elaine Marie, with a twin brother. Yes, there are two of me, identical twins, Richard and Robert. So we basically grew up in a middle class setting. We weren't well off and we weren't too bad, But, growing up, it was a close vibe family. Mommy tried her best, to do what she can for us, do what she could for us. And as I said, our father was always in close proximity and kept a relationship with us. It wasn't a thing where it was a totally single parent kind of thing, meaning she wasn't growing us all by herself, because daddy was always in the mix in some way or form, right? Them just couldn't get along, so them call it quits early out. Growing up now, my father and uncles are all musicians, and I figure we were, besides it being in our blood, my brother and I, we also were influenced by visuals. We saw them doing what they do. When we visited daddy on a weekend or so, they are always doing something musical. They used to rehearse in their living room, set up the full band, because my dad and uncles are the Browne bunch, and it's a full band, drum, bass, 2 guitars and keyboards, 5 people. And so being around that, being in that environment, I think had a huge part to play on me and my brother's development as musicians and as producers, because outside of them playing instruments now, we also used to go to the studio with them when we were young, maybe 8, 9, 10, those age groups. So I used to go to the studio and watch them record, and when we got home, we would pretend to be doing the same thing. We would mimic what they were doing with whatever we had around us. We would pretend to be recording and mixing and playing the instruments. So moving forward now, my brother followed in dad's footsteps and started playing bass, so daddy started to show him stuff. I was interested in drums, so I used to play drums like Uncle Clevie. And Uncle Clevie actually gave me one of his first drum sets. So my first drum set belonged to my uncle. And I played it a couple of years, and then I can't say why I switched or exactly when I switched to guitars. But at some point, my father gave my brother an acoustic guitar, because he said, every bass player should play guitar because it helps strengthen the hands and give you a wider knowledge of chords and, music on a whole. So the guitar was at home and Richard was not having it. Richard never interested at all. So I started, taking it up and messing around, and then I found it cool to just sit with him. So he'll be playing a bass line and I would sit and just strum some chords. So I guess it's the laziness within me, because every time I had to play the drums, the drums were always packed away, and I had to set it up, play it loud, the whole neighborhood hear it, and when I'm finished, I have to pack it up back. So maybe that was one of the things, and then I just like the vibe. Because, either way, I would be jamming with my brother, whether I'm playing drums and he's there grooving out, or I'm on the guitar strumming away with him. Anyway, I decided to go more to guitar than stick with drums. So, moving past that age, maybe 9, 10 or so, started, playing more guitars, taking it more seriously, and, learning. I'm mostly self-taught, and I use the word self-taught because I wasn't formally trained. I am not formally trained as a musician. So Dad showed me some stuff, and I learned stuff here and there in the field too. As I grew up and started playing with other musicians, you learn as you go along, and I learned a lot on my own as well. So started practicing. So even on weekends as a teenager, when Richard, my brother, would go out, with friends and do whatever, I'd be home practicing or something, chilling, something musical. So I, developed the skill, I would say. When I got to my late teens, I remember doing lessons now. Daddy got me some lessons with one of the best teachers, I believe, in Jamaica. Maurice Garden is a jazz guitarist. He's between here, Jamaica, and Canada. I'm not sure exactly where is home for him. I believe he's Jamaican, but he lived in Canada for a while, so he's back and forth. But he actually ended up teaching my son at Edna Manley School of Music as well. More of that in another video. But anyhow, I did some lessons with him, and I really loved the lessons, and they really brought my understanding and my way of approaching how to practice to another level. But those lessons were short-lived. I don't think I did more than 2 months, like 8 weeks of lessons with him, because that year I started to work and tour as well. I'm not sure if it was my schedule or his unavailability or affordability why the lessons stopped. I just remember it just not being a thing anymore. And so that's my journey coming up as a young musician, or just bits and pieces of how that aspect of my life evolved. So moving on now, that same year, 96 I believe, my first real gig as a musician, as a touring musician. Now I started to play for a band who backed Dennis Browne, the great, legendary Dennis Browne. I spoke about it in last season's episode about traveling with that band. But that was my first experience with that band. My friend actually, Troy Wilson, a drummer, who I left this part out. When I was a teen in high school, we had a band. So it was Troy on drums, my brother on bass, Chance Richard. Red Rat was also a part of the band as our DJ. Red Rat is Troy's brother. And we had a brethren, Dale Harrison on keyboards, me on guitar, and our lead vocalist was Errol Bonnick. He's still close friends and everything, but that band situation, it didn't work out. We recorded an album and everything, did a few shows and everything, but it just never manifested into anything more than it was. But I believe it served a great purpose, as in we all learned and honed our skills as producers, because we produced the record ourselves with a little assistance from my father. And so we honed our skills as session musicians as well, and that was our little crew and our little environment to practice every weekend, to rehearse and to get our skills together, because our father was really a factor in building the sound and honing our skills as musicians, how to play together in a band and so on and so forth. So that was my teen years pretty much. Anyhow, moving on back to 96 now, touring with Dennis Browne. And that same year I started to work with Damian Marley, Junior Gang. Well, not it was Junior Gang, but in the early to mid 90s and late 90s, Junior Gang wasn't the big artist. The band that I was playing with was actually Julian's band, Julian Marley's band. So those days, Damian used to open for Julian. He was, they were a package. But Damian would go out first and warm up the audience. And then the big man, Julian, would come and do his set, So what that was 96 to 98, that was what I was doing, the tour with the Marleys. So between 96 and 98, I was with the Marleys. Great experience because, they knew me because my father was playing with Ziggy and I'm always at the rehearsals. And then I play guitar. And so I was always at the rehearsals, hanging out in the studio. That's how I got the opportunity to also play on Ziggy's album. I played guitar on one of the tracks. And I did some drum machine stuff for Steve and Ziggy as well, for Steve Marley and Ziggy, and a Bob Marley project. They were familiar with me and they knew my talent and stuff. So when they needed a guitarist, they asked Daddy if I would be interested. So that's how I ended up in that band. However, as 97 rolled on, those days, the Marleys weren't working as often, let's put it that way. And by that time, I had a son. My son was born in 97, Salim. And me need for work. Pretty much, I needed to keep working.